Okay, so following Premier Smith's meeting with Trump, all of Canada's premiers are meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau this week. On Wednesday, they'll weigh in on what Canada's retaliation could look like if Trump does enact those tariffs, if the signal and the noise thing comes clear. So with me now is Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe to talk about this. Premier Moe, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here, sir.
Well, thank you so much, David.
You were listening just then. Kevin O'Leary was at that meeting in Mar-a-Lago with Premier Smith. You know, a lot of talk about signal and noise and taking Trump seriously, but not literally. What do you draw from where the country and the economy is a week away from Donald Trump going back to the White House?
Well, I think that is a point, is to take, what President-elect Trump says seriously, but maybe not take all of it literally. Listen, our position is, and many premiers are reaching out at the subnational level, Daniel Smith included, has been reaching out like other premiers. I myself have had numerous meetings with governors, with part of the incoming secretaries, and a number of other congressmen and senators, as other premiers have. So there is that subnational outreach, which is important. Second, we're heading to Ottawa here this week. We'll support this federal government, or quite likely the next, in their engagement efforts. Third, when we do meet with the Prime Minister this week, there will be, hopefully a number of conversation topics that occur there. One is, what is the lay of the land from their perspective? How do we support the federal government in that engagement? The border security plan. That's one thing President-elect Trump has very clearly stated, is he does want to see something demonstrable in the way of a border security plan. You're going to see Saskatchewan add to this conversation tomorrow from a provincial perspective, but the federal government has committed $1.3 billion, and we want to see, what that is going to look like. Retaliatory tariffs, that discussion, although may be necessary, isn't really heading us in the right direction. And last but not least, I do agree that we are going to need, at the end of the day, provincial premiers' efforts, ministers' efforts are only going to go so far. Right. We are going to need someone with a mandate to sit across the table and deal with at that time, President Trump, to end these tariffs and get to that, strong, integrated economy that we have today, to get back to what we can build together. And that is really the strength of North America, is how we create that energy security, that food security, that manufacturing security, and our general security as well. And the 2% commitment is going to be part of these conversations as we move along too. So
the conversations on Wednesday, I want to get to that in just a second, but Kevin O'Leary was there this weekend. Danielle Smith was there this weekend. Kevin O'Leary says, we don't know what's going to happen. Danielle Smith came away convinced we're going to see tariffs very quickly from President-elect Trump going back in. Two very different views on what's to come. What's your thought? Do you think, even with the border response and what's happened, that tariffs are inevitable next week?
I think there is a high degree of likelihood that we are going to see tariffs, not only in Canada, but maybe other countries as well. It's on us to continue to, take those words of President-elect Trump very seriously and work towards that not happening. But if it should happen, to ensure that we're doing, our level best to have them lifted as soon as possible. And, the one priority that President-elect Trump has said is that he wants to see some demonstrable increases in the border security. And I would suspect at some point he's going to want to talk about the 2% commitment that Canada has made. And I think that's two areas that, we should be looking at, not only in the case of the border to keep Americans safe to some degree from drugs and illegal migrants, but to keep Canadians safe and ultimately to enhance North American security. That's an easy win, and I think a positive conversation for us to have in North America.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guns come in from the United States. I mean, there's a two-way traffic there that is of mutual concern. But I wonder, Premier, like we have seen what the federal government has put on the table and different responses there, and the RCMP and the CBSA have been down in Washington meeting with their counterparts in the incoming administration. We've seen provincial responses. You say you'll have something to say tomorrow. Are you confident it's gotten to a point of critical mass that it might satisfy the president-elect? Because this is a shifting goalpost situation, it seems. So where do you think we are?
Yeah, it will be, and I think Kevin O'Leary had said, the conversation really starts on Inauguration Day, and I suspect, this is an administration that we're going to work with over the course of the next 4 years. He had a very strong mandate, taking not only the presidency, but the Senate and the House as well. And that's where my words come, and I would say in a nonpartisan way. I'm not being partisan with this statement, but we need someone sitting across the table from him with an equivalent mandate. It is, I think, of utter importance that whoever is representing Canada as the Prime Minister down there that does have that that 4-year mandate or an equivalent mandate to what President Trump has. And we've been quite clear. We'd like to see an election sooner rather than later and allow Canadians the opportunity to provide that mandate for a Prime Minister and a government in Canada.
Yeah, look, as a governing entity, the government of Canada is still working. The political situation it finds itself in is difficult, to understate it. So there's going to be some clarity on that in the coming months. But until then, Danielle Smith was saying today there would be a national unity crisis if the federal government tries to do anything on oil exports and other exports going into the United States in response to tariffs. Sort of in response to comments Melanie Joly made that all options are on the table. Now, do you take that as kind of like placeholder language from the federal government, not ruling anything in, not ruling anything out until they know exactly what they're dealing with? Or do you think they're really serious about stopping your potash and natural resources or those in Alberta?
Well, they won't. And two, the conversations that we've had with the federal government have been around, it's very specific, precision-based retaliatory tariffs, which I hope we don't get to. It's moving the wrong direction. Any export tariffs or restriction of products that Canadians produce and providing them to anyone in the world is simply not on. And that would be the most divisive conversation, the most divisive situation that we would find ourselves in Canada, adding not only the chaos that we see, courtesy of the Liberal Party of Canada in Ottawa today, but extend that across the nation. And so it just simply can't be on. And I've asked the federal government very directly. They've assured me that isn't part of the conversation. And I would say that it can't be moving forward if we truly value Canadian unity.
Okay, so you're not worried about it. I mean, they kind of... You know what a negotiation like this is like, where you have to say certain things in public that you may not be intending to do because you don't want to show your cards too early, but you don't get the sense we're headed towards a big federalism showdown over the export of natural resources in response to this, because it feels like that would just compound the economic damage on Canadians in response to what could be difficult tariffs.
It would divide this nation right down the center, and it would be the most disastrous thing, even far more disastrous than this whole discussion around, tariffs on the 49th parallel. And I would hope that a Liberal government in their desperate dying days wouldn't consider dividing our nation like that. It would be a national unity crisis. They don't have the power to do it, and I hope they don't consider it. They've assured me they're not thinking about it at this point in time, right. So I'll take them at their word at this point in time.
What about critical minerals, Premier? This is something David Eby has talked about. Doug Ford was out today sort of talking about we're accelerating approvals to have more critical minerals that the American needs. It feels like that's the carrot being dangled, but there could be a stick. I mean, do you think for those future industries, and they don't have these minerals inside their borders, they need it from us, they need it from China, they need it from Norway. What about using that as leverage?
Well, I agree with Premier Ford, not so much in holding these, and I don't think he indicated that we should in any way hold these minerals back or apply export tariffs to them. But this is part of the broader conversation and adding to the, the great union and the great just how deeply integrated our economy is. We'd like to do with critical minerals and rare earth elements between the U.S. and Canada, and we have a processing facility in Saskatoon as we speak, is to do the same thing that we've done in the energy file, where Canadian energy, Saskatchewan and Alberta largely, Newfoundland to some degree, is actually being shipped to the U.S., putting Americans to work, creating a higher value product and providing energy security for North America and other countries around the world. We can do the same when it comes to critical minerals and really, usurp some of the stranglehold that a country like China has in that space. That makes it's much more challenging to do that when we're talking about tariffs and counter tariffs and export tariffs. And I would suggest that we should really focus on moving past that conversation and focusing and concentrating and following the success that we've had in the ag industry, in the oil industry, in the mining industry, in how integrated and how successful those industries are because of the integration across the 49th parallel. And that's really what the subnational leaders have been bringing in all of our discussions south of the border, and will continue to. At the end of the day, we're going to need a Prime Minister with a mandate that's going to be able to bring that very same level of discussion to the President.
I don't think there's a politician in Canada who disagrees with you that they'd like to move past the tariff conversation, but it kind of depends on what the president-elect does, right? So you're going to have to talk about this on Wednesday when you're all here in Ottawa. Where do you think, broadly, Premier, this is going to land? Will it be... They've been working on a list in Ottawa. You've been working on a list at the COF table, the Council of the Federation table. Is it sort of finding internal alignment on where you can hit back should it come to that, and what other measures you might be able to do on the fentanyl and trafficking demands? What do you think comes out of Wednesday?
Yeah, all of those things I think are need to be part of the discussion on Wednesday is, what does our border security plan look like? Where does the $1.3 billion go? Can the federal government and some of the provincial initiatives, can we work together in ensuring they're working in lockstep and doing and performing something demonstrable to not only the U.S. incoming Trump administration, but to Canadians as well when it comes to drugs, when it comes to illegal migrants. We need to, yes, talk, unfortunately, about, very precise counter tariffs, and I would hope that we don't get to that point. We should also be talking about the 2% NATO target, and is it a time for us to be more serious with that commitment? What will we do in the event tariffs come in supporting the industries that are impacted by those tariffs? And largely, I think I will ask as well, and this might surprise some of your viewers, but how do we not only engage as a subnational jurisdiction, and we're doing that, but how do we continue to support Canada in their engagement, whether it be this administration or the next? We would encourage the next to be, to have the opportunity to move forward sooner rather than later. But until that point, we will support the engagement that the current federal government has.
No, it's a time to set aside partisanship and old fights, right? Because the consequences of what could be coming is pretty severe. Premier Scott Moe, we'll see you Wednesday here in Ottawa. We'll be down at the meeting site. Thanks for joining us today. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe.
Thanks so much, David.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, David. We'll see you soon.